Hi, my name's Rachel. I'm the homegrown gardener, and today we're outside in the garden and we're going to be talking compost. Compost is not only a great way to improve your soil quality, but it's also a great way to reduce your carbon footprint by reducing the amount of food scraps and other brown waste that's going into landfill. I am relatively new to compost, so please, I'm not an expert, but I'm going to be talking you through today what I'm doing and the different methods that I've tried with regards to composting, so that you might have an idea what's possible in a small urban backyard. There are many different methods to composting, and many people have very strong opinions in different directions, but I've tried a few different ways so far. First, I started with the bokashi method, which is where you layer greens and browns in a container, and the food waste pickles or ferments. Now, for me, I didn't like this method so much. There is runoff, like water, that comes off from the process of the decomposition, and unfortunately, I ended up with some quite foul-smelling liquid in one of our rooms. So that option didn't work for us so much. So I've tried a few different things. One really easy option is dig and dump, where you just get your food scraps, dig a big hole in the garden and bury the food scraps underneath. That's a really simple option, which is a great way to get started, but I'm going to talk you through the process that I'm doing at the moment. So my current process, I have this bamboo container which I keep in the kitchen, and I fill this up with food scraps when we're cooking. So what I tend to do is try and chop the pieces up as small as possible. I find this helps to quicken the composting process, and I will layer the food scraps in here along with small bits of paper and keep this in the kitchen. So about every week or so this fills up, and then I now transfer it out to this clay pot. It's made from bamboo. It's from a company called Bamboozle. So it's got this lid with holes in top, and also a filter here, so it helps to let the air circulate, but you can really use anything, any container that you have in your kitchen, to collect the food scraps and start composting. Recently I purchased this clay pot composting system, which has got 3 barrels from a local maker that's made these from hand in Dibba. So for me, I really liked the idea that I was supporting a local sustainable business here in the UAE. This 3 or 4 pot system is quite popular. There is a plastic system that's similar to this called gobble composter, which is really popular, and I've heard it works really well, but for me I really wanted to go with a non-plastic locally made option. Simply it's got the lid on top, and then you've got these 3 pots underneath. You'll see that there is air holes on the side, which is really important for the composting process. And what you basically do is I use my food scraps, I pop them in here, and then you put a layer of browns on top. Peat moss is a great thing to use as well. It really helps with the composting process. And if you don't have any peat moss, a little hack that you might like to use is some natural yogurt. So part of the composting process is that the bacteria actually break down the food scraps. So adding a little bit of natural yogurt, diluted in some water into your compost. You don't want to keep it too wet. It can really help to increase the bacteria life in your composting system and to speed up that process, so that you will be getting some nice healthy soil. In here we have the food scraps from the kitchen. I've got fruit peels, banana peels, anything that you're not using in your cooking. It's all in here. We've got tea bags, coffee grinds, crushed eggshells, small bits of paper, all in here to begin the composting process. And you do different layers, so layer the food scraps, then with some peat moss, maybe add a bit of yogurt like I mentioned, and layer this till it's about 3/4 full, and then leave it to begin the composting process. So after a couple of weeks, you end up with something that looks a bit like this. And this is the partially decomposed compost. And you can see that it's starting to look a bit more like soil, but there's still chunks of little bits of sticks and food scraps, bits of paper in here that you can see. So it's still a bit chunky. So this needs a bit longer to continue to break down. But you can see the difference between the raw food scraps and the partially composted material that we have here. Now, I've only been using this system for a couple of weeks, but just yesterday I decided to sieve some of this so I could show you what the final compost actually looks like. So let's take a look at that. You may want to sieve the compost to allow the larger pieces to continue to break down, but to remove out the bits that are already composted. I hope that I've been able to show you how simple it is to start composting. As I mentioned, there's lots of different opinions and methods for doing this, but I'd really encourage you to get started and to start having this black gold compost for your garden and your plants. For those of you who have already started composting, I'd love to hear your ideas, your methods, tips and tricks so that we can continue to encourage others to begin the composting process. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy gardening.